Okay. Okay, how's this? Can you hear me at least? We're gonna work through this together. Can you hear me? Okay. Loud and clear. Okay. Give me 2 seconds. I'm in the process of implementing a new streaming system, so I have to work out the kinks. So bear with me here. All right. So let me know if the audio starts getting worse or better, because I'm going to start applying filters to this thing really fast. All right. Let's bring you all the way down there. Let's bring you to 55. Okay. Check. Filter. Let's go ahead and apply noise suppression. Noise suppression is going to be 26. Let's do one more. Let's go ahead and throw some compression on there. Compression. 10, 18, 6. Let's do 1. 1. 5. 5.7. .70. Okay. How does that audio sound? Does it sound better or worse? Does the audio sound better or worse? Give me some feedback here. Better? Does it sound less ambient? Everything sound a lot cleaner? Okay, perfect. I'm getting the thumbs up. Okay, cool. All right, so some fun stuff. So okay, so here's what's gonna happen here. I just implemented. I just got some new hardware so that I can now. I'm gonna start doing some more live streaming, but I'm also going to implement it with some video game streams too. So I'm gonna do them separately, so don't freak out if you don't like to watch video game streams. Totally fine. But what I'm going to start doing is a couple times a week while I'm live trading. For those of you who watched the live stream, I think it was a couple weeks ago before Thanksgiving, we were doing the live trading, and I was kind of just like running out of shit to talk about, and we were sitting there for 2 hours just like waiting for stuff to happen. So when the market is slow, but we're waiting for it to move, me and some of the guys from the Discord, from the trading community, we're going to start streaming some games, and then down in the corner, you know, somewhere down here, we're gonna have the charts, and then as the market moves, we'll pause the game and we'll throw up the charts, basically just as a way to keep the live trading entertaining while the market just remains kind of stale. So, you know, we're not just going to cover Bitcoin. We're going to cover basically anything that we're trading in the community, something that's like trending that we're trying to keep an eye on. That's what we'll be streaming along with the game. So for those of you, who like to watch that kind of thing, you know, we're going to have some more content. I'm getting a note that my mic is fizzing a lot when your volume peaks. Okay. Maybe I should turn this down a little bit. Turn that down. And I think I need to add one more filter. Hold on. Let's add one more filter here. Filter. Let's do gain. 0.3. Okay, how does that sound? Does that sound better or worse? Better or worse? Test, test, test. I'll wait for you guys to respond so I can hear some feedback. Is that better or worse? Okay, so no clipping, everything sounds better. Sweet. Sorry. Yeah, I'm in the process of like porting over. I'm like not the most stream, online streamer inclined. So I'm in the process of like porting over all my settings from my PC to my laptop, which is going to handle all the streaming. So it's a bit of a learning curve for me. So bear with me. Okay? Okay. Sweet. Let's talk about the market. And then after that, I'm going to do some live trades. Okay. So let's, as I always like to do, let's start on the 12-hour or maybe even the 1-day chart for Bitcoin here, and let's take a look at what it looks like. Raise the volume a little bit. It is still clipping. Okay, so then that means it's going to be my noise gate or noise suppression maybe. No, it's gonna be my noise gate. Yeah. Okay. How is that? Is that better or worse? Better or worse? Better or worse? Better or worse? Clipping, 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 clipping. Is that better or worse? Sounds good to you. Sounds good on your end. Any clipping? There's no clipping? There's no audio clipping going on? Okay, sweet. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this. Let's look at the market within the context of this parabolic curve that we've been following for a while. And we see if we look at it on the 1 week, actually let's look at the 3-day chart. 3-day chart, we see that we actually broke this parabolic envelope, and we're kind of like sitting on support here, and we see the support right in here. So as we look in closer on like the 60 to 120 minute candles, this black curve right here is the parabolic curve, the upper curve, and we're sitting right on top of it. And it's doing a really interesting trend right now. Let's go ahead and move this up. So merge up. It's doing something very interesting, and it looks like it's possibly making a reaccumulation phase. Because we didn't just crash all to shit like everyone was thinking, myself included. We thought, once we broke this parabolic curve, that it would just like everything would just go to shit, and it didn't. So what's in our future? So if we look at the 60-minute, for those of you who have been following this, these sort of market activities that I've been talking about, this looks just like a reaccumulation phase. So if you think about a market cycle, it has the ebbs and flows, it goes up and down. Where's my stylus? So if you think about a market cycle, right, we have the accumulation phase, it comes up. Accumulation phase. It has the markup phase, markup phase, and then it has the distribution phase, or it potentially has somewhere in here before it hits the distribution phase, it has minor accumulation phases. So it actually looks like this. It has the potential to go something like this. And so ultimately it comes back down after the distribution. So it's entirely possible we're seeing something like this, where we're reaccumulating in here, because the market didn't just crash, right? It is now finding support in this level. There's a lot of volume being exchanged here. A lot of shorts got liquidated in here. A lot of longs got liquidated in here, and now we're heading back up. So this price activity looks a lot like a accumulation phase. Accumulation. So what does that mean? A reaccumulation phase, it's a part of the market cycle where Wyckoff talks about you have these large players in the market called composite operators, sometimes called the composite man, and they're the people that actually drive the market. So like large hedge fund managers, guys like JP Morgan, for example, they really drive the market and they really dictate the trend. So what they look to do is you look to disrupt the market, and things like this. And if we zoom out to like the 6-minute candles, we see a long history of this happening, where we see like little minor corrections. Price goes up, market comes down, price goes up, market comes down, and these are all reaccumulation phases. That's what these are. These are all reaccumulation phases, right in here. And it looks like we're starting to make another one right here. So what are the characteristics of an accumulation phase? Or reaccumulation phase, rather. So we have something called let's zoom in here so we can put it into context. We have something called a buying climax. Something like this. We see a buying climax where volume is peaking. There's an immediate automatic reaction. That's what this AR is here, where the market makes a strong move upward. It finds an overwhelming amount of supply, the demand diminishes, and then the supply dominates the market, and it comes back down, and then it pings back off. And sometimes you see something called a secondary test, where the market tries to find a new low again. Sometimes it does, but ultimately it kind of meanders back upward. And right now we're seeing something called a sign of strength. Sign of strength is going to be a move that tests upward near the buying climax, last point of supply zone right in here. And what is likely to happen, what I would expect to happen, doesn't have to happen, but I would expect to see some pullback where we meander downward like this into a part of the phase called a creek. And part of this anatomy is going to be something like this. So the price is going to meander downward. It's going to confuse bulls. It's going to confuse shorters. But ultimately, the volume is going to trickle downward until it goes into either something like a spring, where the price finds a new low and then juts upward, or whatever. But I'll show you some historic context of these springs and reaccumulation phases. Okay, so this is a good one. Okay. So let's see if we can, okay, here's a good one right here. Let's make it the 240. Where'd it go? Where did it go? I just saw it. Okay, right here. So if we look at this price activity right here, this is like classic reaccumulation activity right here for Bitcoin. Okay, so we see a buying climax right here. We see an automatic reaction right here. We see a secondary test here. We see a secondary test here. But ultimately, this whole thing is bound by this trade. It's called a trading range, right? It's going to be bound by here, by this boundary right here, and it'll be bound here. Okay, so anything above and below is considered outside the trading range. Okay, so we see the buying climax here, automatic reaction here, secondary test here, secondary test here. It kind of meanders upward. We see a sign of strength here, but ultimately the price kind of diminishes in volume. It goes down, and this right, oh shit, And this right here, this is going to be considered the creek. Right in here, this is the creek. Until you see an injection of volume here that sends it downward. And you can kind of think of like this whole process of accumulation and distribution as like a balancing act of supply and demand in the market. And as the market matures, you start to see a change in what Wyckoff calls a quote unquote changing characteristic of market dynamics, right? So what you're witnessing is you're witnessing the distribution or the handing off of market dominance, right? So the entire point of the accumulation phase is to acquire market dominance for the larger operators, like your composite men, for example, right? Like your JP Morgans, your Goldman Sachs, these big guys, right? They want to get as much market share as they can. And so what they do is they go through these accumulation phases that are literally meant to grind down investors, and so that they can acquire as much as they can for as cheap as they can without crashing the market. So they want to acquire, in this case, Bitcoin. They want to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible, and ultimately drive the price up if it's a reaccumulation phase, or drive the price down if it's a distribution phase. So what we're looking at here is an accumulation phase, or a setup for an accumulation phase so far. And so right now, here's our trading range. Okay. When you're setting up an accumulation phase and you want to test it, you want to see market activity bound inside these upper and lower limits of the market. And the reason why I'm going so in depth with this is because I've found a ton of coins that are going through accumulation phases right now that are going to be potential really great long-term plays in the near future here. So what we'll see, what we'd like to see here is we'd like to see this thing bound within this trading range before ultimately possibly making a new low and going higher. That doesn't mean it has to happen, but that is a classic characteristic of a reaccumulation phase, is that it's going to meander downward, maybe see some fake outs, so the price goes up, goes down, price goes up, and then it goes down. People say, oh shit, panic sell, panic sell. Meanwhile, everyone who's panic selling this dip is actually selling off their share to the large guys, and that's what they want, because ultimately they're going to shoot the price right back up. Okay, so long story short, it's very early in this phase, so it's kind of hard to make an educated decision about what's going to happen with Bitcoin. But we can get some clues, right? So if we look at our Bollinger Bands, for example, if we look at our higher time frames for our Bollinger Bands, like I'm talking higher time frames like 6 hour, for example. 6 hour, and even higher, we can look at something like the 12 hour, maybe even the 1 day. Let's get the 1 day, right? So if we're looking at our Bollinger Bands on the 1 day, let's actually get rid of you here. Okay, so if we're looking at the Bollinger Bands on the 1 day, we see classic consolidation behavior on the Bollinger Bands down here. So we see a rounding of the bands here, and that's indicated right here. This is our BBW, Bollinger Band width, and here's our %B for Bollinger Bands. And we see that the Bollinger Bands are starting to round out, which indicates consolidation is a longer term consolidation, either some pullback, maybe some sideways action, but it's not expected to make any aggressive move upwards until we get some consolidation of the Bollinger Bands in the form of like a squeeze here, or a squeeze here, or a squeeze here, something like that. What this means is that as the Bollinger Bands start to round out, this is a forecast for decreased volatility. In our case, we were heading upward. So it's a decreased volatility upward. It's a forecast for decreased volatility, which means that it's a decreased momentum upward, which means it will likely start to either consolidate or pull back a little bit. But that plays really well into the accumulation phase, because as the Bollinger Bands start to round out and they start to squeeze again, we'll mature through the trading range. All right, I just said a lot. Let's look at some questions here. No questions. All right. So I've eyeballed a couple of these coins that I believe are going through accumulation phases right now. One of the most obvious is EOS. Say what you want about the technology, say what you want about the developers. I don't really give a shit, but the coin is going through an accumulation phase. So it went through an accumulation phase here, and now it's going through an reaccumulation phase as we speak. So let's actually look at the 4-hour chart. Okay, so if we look at the accumulation phase here, this is like classic accumulation. So we see it bound by this trading range in here. We see the selling climax, automatic reaction, secondary test. And then we see this is the creek right here, where we have a little bit of a spring and then a jump across the creek, which leads into the markup phase. Okay, and part of the markup phase is there are several reaccumulation phases, and here's one of them right here. Okay, and I believe we're in our second reaccumulation phase right here. So if we zoom in closer to our reaccumulation phase for EOS, we see something on the 60-minute like this, which looks very similar to Bitcoin right now, where we have our buying climax, our automatic reaction, our secondary test, and now we're meandering upward. And I need to actually update this, where this is going to be a sign of strength right here, right? So EOS is going to be a coin to watch out for because it's in the process of the markup phase. It's making new highs. It's showing strength because it's not pulling back like a lot of the other coins are, and so it has a lot of possible growth in its future once it breaks out of this reaccumulation phase. Another coin, Ether. This is great. Ether is going through what I believe to be a macro accumulation phase. So if we look at Ether here, same thing as what we're seeing on Bitcoin, but on a macro scale, right? So like this should look very familiar to the Bitcoin chart, right? We see the buying climax, we see an automatic reaction where the price goes down, we see a secondary test, and ultimately we form this giant trading range, right? And we see our sign of strength, we see our secondary test, we see the market go up, and ultimately we see this creek being formed here, all the while the volume is consolidating and going downward until we see this sudden injection of volume right here, which gives us our jump across the creek. We're moving upward, we see another jump across the creek right here, and now we're seeing a sign of strength back up to the edge of the creek, and ultimately Ether is very, very likely to take a nice healthy move upward and continuous upward trend, because it just spent what, 4 or 5 months going through a reaccumulation phase. This is reaccumulation, and it looks very solid. It was something I really overlooked previously, but this is one of the more clear examples that we have of a macro reaccumulation phase in the crypto market. And it makes sense, right? Like the whole point of, and it got me too, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, but like I got Wyckoffed. And what that means is the composite operators, they ground the market down. They got rid of all the super bullish people. They got rid of a lot of the weaker hands. You know, you hear this phrase like the shaking out, the changing of hands in the market, and that's what this whole process is for. It's for shaking people out of their positions so that these large operators can accumulate as much as they can in this area, and now they're free to push the market up. So Ether is going to be another great play in the coming weeks and months. Ether is gonna be great. Okay, something else I'm watching, Bitcoin Cash. I've been talking about Bitcoin Cash a lot. So I'm still on the fence right now with if I think this is a giant reaccumulation phase or if I think this is a failed reaccumulation phase right here. So if we look at the past for Bitcoin Cash, we see it went through this accumulation phase right here. Very similar to what EOS looked like, but this is going to be Bitcoin Cash's version of it. So we see, last point of support. It goes down. selling climax, automatic reaction, secondary test of the trading range. Ultimately, it broke upward and it made this creek before it shot down to weed out as many people as possible, and it jumped the creek and it went on this tear, right? It just skyrocketed. And now I think it's very possible that Bitcoin Cash is in another macro reaccumulation phase, because it's been how long? It's been almost a month, maybe 4 weeks since it shot up and went parabolic. And now this trading range looks solid. If we look at it from the context of a macro trading range, I need to redraw a lot of these lines, but we see, we see the buying climax here. I'll go ahead and label it for you guys. So we see the buying climax here. We see the automatic reaction. We see the secondary test, another secondary test here. And now we see the creek going on here, the jump across the creek. This would be considered a sign of strength. It goes back down, and this should be continued downward here. And I think we're still in the creek. So I would be kind of surprised to see, I take that back. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin Cash shove out of this trading range, but I don't think it's likely considering the volume is going down. And I would like to see something like very large increase in volume here after the volume consolidates like this. So key characteristic of being in the quote-unquote creek is that it's the price movement is just meandering here. It's like not really trending very well, and overall the volume is going down. And the whole point of it is it's supposed to exhaust investors and get them disheartened so that they can give up their market share, right? And so ultimately the price jumps and the price goes up, right? Well, right now we're seeing the same thing here. Like the volume is going down. It's kind of meandering. It doesn't really look very nice. And so I would expect to see a little bit more volume consolidation, maybe for like another day or two. And then I would fully expect to see another creek jump where it goes here and pushes on to new highs. So again, this is Bitcoin Cash here. Okay. What's another coin I was looking at? Let me see. Oops. Okay, another coin was another set of coins I was looking at here. Oh, that's Ether. What is this? IOTA. Oh, OMG. OMG looks great. OMG is another reaccumulation phase, I believe. Disregard this little boner here, but oh my God, sorry guys. Sorry, my dog just freaked out about something in the hallway. Okay, so we see here OMG is in a classic trading range here. And I'll walk you through the anatomy of OMG. I've been tracking a lot of these coins because I think there are going to be a lot of really great plays in the future. OMG is one of them. So we see it bound by this trading range in here. And right now, you see it's a little bit more of a detailed, let's get rid of the EMA. It's a little bit more complex of a trading range, but it is a trading range nonetheless. Okay, so we see here, we see the buying climax, the selling climax, the automatic reaction here, but overall the market is bound by this trading range in here. And we see a test right here called a spring, and then we see here the jump across the creek right here, right? The injection of volume. After the volume just trickles down to nothing, the injection of volume hits the market, price jumps, okay? But the market wasn't ready to rally. So we see a couple of these things. So we see a few creeks in here. We see one creek, we see two creeks, and right now we're in the process of testing most likely another creek because we see the volume is starting to consolidate again. So I would expect to see another jump across the creek, which will push us to new highs and have us testing the buying climax and automatic reaction zone right in here. Okay. So this is a really great question. Someone from the YouTubes, they're asking, how can you tell the difference between reaccumulation or distribution? So reaccumulation and distribution look very similar. Okay, they have very similar characteristics. They have very similar traits. But one of the biggest differentiators here is that reaccumulation has decreasing volume throughout the length of the trading range. Right? You should see with a distribution phase, you should see increased selling on these dips. And that's not what you're seeing here, right? So we see a spring here, but the volume's actually a lot lower than it was initially. Why is that? Well, that's because we shook out as many people as we can without crashing the market. So every time the dips go lower, the volume goes lower. So across the length of the trading range, the volume overall is going down. Just in general, it's going down. Right? So that's a key characteristic of reaccumulation versus distribution. And they're very easy to get confused. And if you recall my previous streams where I talked about Bitcoin being in distribution phases, after I've been researching this stuff, I've been trying to learn as much as I can. But ultimately what I found was that what I thought were distribution phases in Bitcoin previously were actually reaccumulation phases. So I mistook the trading ranges because they look so damn similar. I mistook them because I didn't understand the idea of like consolidating volume throughout the length of the trading range, and that's where I went wrong. You know, they look very, very similar. Okay, what's another coin I'm watching here? IOTA, I'm starting to keep an eye on this. I haven't decided how I feel about it yet, but it looks like, you know, it's entering some sort of range-bound market here. So keeping an eye on this, keeping a tab on it. You see the volume consolidation throughout the length of it. IOTA could be a nice play in the future, but I don't have any notes on that just yet. You guys have any questions about anything I just talked about? Are there any coins actually in a distribution phase? Yeah, so yeah, I'm trying to think of ones that I saw. I'm gonna have to think about the distribution phase ones. Have you tried looking into Wyckoff distribution accumulations within these big reaccumulation phases? I don't know what you're asking. Are you saying the buy and sell volume during reaccumulation are the same? No, that's not what I'm saying. What about Zcoin? Is Bitcoin in an uptrend or is it faking out? Well, that's the big mystery, right? I don't think it's faking out because it's definitely in an uptrend, and it's in an uptrend until proven otherwise, right? Yeah, look, so since I started this stream, we started to head back down toward this last point of supply here within the reaccumulation phase. You know, I would expect it to see some meandering here, maybe encounter some support here, but ultimately break through it, and possibly a new low. That's not a requirement of a reaccumulation phase, but overall, I would expect it to meander a little lower to get a better price target. That's if this is a reaccumulation phase. Keep in mind, right? This could end up being a double top. This could end up being a whole list of things. It's still very early on in the setup. Can you show a distribution phase example to make it clear? Yeah, sure. So Bitcoin's actually gone through a couple of distribution phases on the smaller time scales. So here's one right here. Right, so if we go to, let's look at here's a distribution phase right here. Maybe even the 120-minute view. Okay. So this is classic distribution phase right here for Bitcoin. Okay. Let's go to the 60-minute view. Okay. So where'd it go? Here we go. Okay. Here's a distribution phase, and I'll label it for you guys. Okay. So one of the things you see throughout the length of this distribution phase is you don't see volume going down. You see it kind of just staying flat. You see peaks of volume, sell volume on the dips. Right here, right? So I'll go ahead and label this thing out for you. And let me get rid of some of these other indicators. Let's get rid of Bollinger Bands and let's get rid of EMA. Okay. So here is, let me look at this real quick. Okay, so let's go ahead and label out this trading range. So you see the buying climax here. I mean, you could even argue this is the buying climax here since you see such a high volume here. But just for the sake of the trading range, we could even. Okay, well let's keep it here. So here's the buying climax here. God damn it. Buying climax here. Okay. Then we see the automatic reaction here. So let's go ahead and draw another line. Let's call this the automatic reaction here. Then we see a secondary test. We see an up thrust here. Something like that. Right? Then we see, okay, we can call this a support line as well. All right, splendid. Let me go ahead and write on this trading range real quick. Okay, so here is your preliminary supply, or well, let's call this buying climax. Okay, here's your buying climax. Here is your buying climax. Here's your automatic reaction. Here's your secondary test. Here is a secondary test downward. This is considered an up thrust. This is considered a sign of weakness in here. So SOW. Here is the up thrust after distribution. Here is your last point of supply right in here. Your LPSY. And then ultimately your markdown phase before it goes back through the cycle. So one of the key characteristics here is that we don't see decreasing volume here. We see on the dips, we see actual spikes in volume, right? On the dips, here's a dip, spike in volume. Here's a volume climax on the up thrust after distribution. And as the price goes down, we see the sell volume increasing until we see a selling climax, and then it does the whole phase again. But the key is in the volume here, is that we don't see consolidating volume. We see volume that's looking to escape the market, basically. Okay, does that make sense for this is the distribution phase? Yeah, and someone in my trading community pointed out a really good. Is he in the Discord server? Does anyone know? Can you put a picture of his possible distribution phase. So I don't have to dig through the archive. But it was basically something like this. Because like I said, the distribution and the reaccumulation phase look very similar. He has an idea, and I'm not inclined to disagree with him. So there's this channel right here. Something like that. Let's make you nice and fat so we can distinguish you. Here's one. And what did we say? Let's look at the 2020 minute. So there's one, and then I forget how he had it drawn, but he has it drawn very nicely. Something like that. Can someone post that? Anyway, the argument is that because we're so fresh into this reaccumulation phase or distribution phase, is that this could actually be the beginning of a distribution phase. So we don't know. You know, like I said, it's something that we have to keep updating our charts and roll with the punches right now. And that's why I'm currently sidelined with Bitcoin and a lot of the coins, because if Bitcoin goes down, they all go down. So this could very easily work into be a distribution phase, this being the buying climax, automatic reactions, such and such. This could be a secondary test, an ST. You know, this could very easily play out that way. It doesn't have to be a reaccumulation phase. It's still very early. Ah, here we go. Okay, so someone from the Discord posted this. Okay, so we see here, here is what a possible distribution phase would look like. Okay, so we see this nice channel here, and let's go ahead and see if I can make this. Let's put this over here. Okay, and here's our buddy Frank. Here's his. Wait, what is this? This isn't what we were looking at. This is for Ether. That's for Ether. We're talking about for Bitcoin. Sorry, miscommunication on my part. So his basic argument was this, was that we could be in a, so Bitcoin was in a channel like this, right? So it was in this ascending channel here, oops, ascending channel here, like that. And then it broke north, and then it broke south of it, which falls right in line if we look at this and we compare. Let me make this smaller so we can overlay it. So if we look at something like this, this looks very similar. But I can't. Am I being an idiot? Why is this not? Okay. So we see here, it looks very similar to what we're going through right now. So that would put us right in here. Right? So we'd be right here. So we just came out of the channel like that. We see this would be the buying climax here, the automatic reaction. Here's the secondary test, which would be right here. And we're kind of failing to test it right now. So this would be the sign of weakness, which goes into the up thrust. So, you know, it's a lot's up in the air right now with Bitcoin. We don't know. We'll just have to play it by ear and keep an eye on it. You know, it could be an accumulation phase. It could be a distribution phase. We don't know. We do not know. What are your thoughts on Ripple? I think it's really handy for transferring between exchanges. That's what I think about Ripple. Do you guys have any other questions about any of this stuff? Oh, and for those of you guys who are late, after this stream, I just wanted to do a recap so we could separate it, but after the stream, going into like 20, maybe 10, 15 minutes afterward, I'm actually going to start live streaming some trades, and it's actually going to be in conjunction with some gaming that we're gonna do. So I'm gonna get like anywhere between 2 and 4 guys, or two to 3 guys from my trading community, guys that are very active in the trading room that we have on the Discord server, and we're gonna watch the market, and while the market's kind of slow, we'll play some PUBG, and as the market moves, we'll assess the market accordingly. But it's basically just to kill time in between the very slow moving market activity that can kind of make a stream boring. Also, for those of you who are trying to get more information about this and would like to hear like more commentary about the market, I have my trading community, and everyone's more than welcome to join it. It's down here at the bottom. It's just at bitcoinschmitcoin.com, and yeah, everyone's welcome. The community is growing fast. Ever since we updated the website, it's been growing really fast, and there's a lot of really good information in there, and a lot of really good traders. So a lot of nice looks on the market, right? All right. Well, if you guys want to stick around, and we just streamed for about 50 minutes, but if you want to watch some live stream and some video games and hang out for a couple hours, you're more than welcome. But as far as the market recap goes, that's all we got. If you're interested in joining the community, go to bitcoinschmitcoin.com, and yeah, you guys have a good night. Okay, we'll see you in a few.